There is a limit to everything, but my wife did not understand this. Because how can you constantly lie and cheat on your husband for 6 years? She didn't realize the consequences, but when she faced them, she regretted it very much. I took a long drag from a clove cigarette, the last vice I still allowed myself. Well, aside from my fashion choices, which had dwindled to pairing heavy boots with business casual outfits. Both habits were leftovers from my goth phase in college and early adulthood. I loved the music and the style, especially on the girls, but never really embraced the angst, especially after I got together with Ellie. I met Ellie during a rough patch in her life. Actually, one of many. Her bad luck began long before she was even born. Her mom, Gloria, was a prohibited substances addict, abusive when she was around but mostly absent. Ellie was raised by her dad, Don, a high school English teacher. Gloria had baby-trapped Don. He had been working on his master's degree in linguistics when he got swept up by Gloria's good looks and wild personality. She got pregnant with Ellie, and Don stepped up to do the right thing. It cost him nearly everything: a promising career, a faithful partner, his health, and his self-respect. The only thing he gained was Ellie, and to him, it was more than worth it. When are you going to quit those things? I don't want you getting lung cancer, babe. I heard Ellie's sweet voice behind me on the balcony. She wouldn't let me smoke inside. You already made me quit drinking. You've extended my life enough, Elle. I stubbed out the cigarette and turned to face her. Sue me. I'm greedy. I want as many years with you as possible. She stood on her tiptoes and kissed me. Though, I do love how you taste after smoking one of those. I've still got a while before my doctor's appointment. I'd be happy to let you taste me some more. She bit her lip. Rain check? I thought last night would have worn you out. I've got to head to the store. I pulled her into my arms and kissed her again. If you ever tire me out so much that I can't go for another round the next morning, check if I've been replaced by an alien. She pulled away, and I gave her a playful swat. Suddenly, I remembered. Oh, do you want me to book your physical while I'm at the doctor? She looked up. No, thanks. But work's messing with my schedule right now. I'm not sure when I'll be able to go. She grabbed her keys and headed out. Long shift today, hun. See you tonight. I always enjoyed watching her walk. She was shorter than me, most people are, but she moved with such grace. The flowing skirts and peasant blouses she favored never failed to make me smile. While I looked like what I was, a corporate IT worker struggling to hang on to a bit of individuality, she always seemed as if she'd just stepped out of Haight-Ashbury in the late 60s. I smiled as I drove to my physical. Last night had been amazing. Ellie had been especially affectionate these past few months, and she was always loving to begin with. I knew this heightened affection would dip soon. It was a pattern with her that I'd noticed for nearly as long as I'd known her. Sometimes I worried she might have bipolar disorder, but she wasn't keen on the idea of taking medication. It wasn't a dramatic shift, and her down periods only lasted a few weeks, but I still found myself concerned for her. I guess that was typical for me. I usually worried about her. I'd met Ellie at a really low point in her life. She'd had a tough upbringing. Her father was always busy trying to make ends meet and was often absent. Derek, her best friend, was one of the few bright spots. Derek lived just a street over, and he'd had a rough childhood too, so they bonded over that. They were close friends, then dated when they got older. They were each other's firsts for everything, and Ellie thought they'd stay together forever. But Derek had other plans. He was a talented guitarist, a decent singer, and not bad at songwriting either. When they were 20, Derek had to choose between Ellie and chasing his dreams, and he chose the latter. Ellie took it really hard. While Derek was eager to hit the road, Ellie longed for stability. She wanted a home and a family, things she hadn't had growing up. She hoped Derek would eventually want the same, but when he didn't, she fell into a deep depression. Ellie was incredibly smart. She'd earned an academic scholarship and threw herself into her studies. She had a passion for poetry and writing and was pursuing an English degree when I met her. Our first encounter wasn't exactly romantic. I was an awkward, cheerful goth barely scraping by in my IT classes while partying too much, and she was a petite, heartbroken hippie trying to get over her first breakup. We literally ran into each other on campus. I wasn't paying attention to where I was going, mostly because I was hungover and trying to shield my eyes from the sunlight. She got distracted by a text, and we collided. She dropped her books and laptop, clearly getting the worst of it. "Oh God, I'm so sorry," I blurted. "Watch where you're damning going, asshole," she snapped back. I offered my hand, and despite the glare she shot me, she took it. We both started picking up her stuff. Her books were fine, but when she tried turning on her laptop, it wouldn't power up. Damn. I can't afford to get this fixed. Why the damn weren't you looking where you were going? Why the damn weren't you? I shot back. I. She started to cry. I'm not the best at handling emotions. I usually default to being pretty laid back and happy because emotional outbursts make me uncomfortable. Growing up, it was hard for me since my family was full of loud voices, big opinions, and even bigger emotions. I used to wonder if I was adopted, though I was a younger version of my dad, so that didn't hold up. Hey, it's okay. We'll figure this out, I said, trying to calm her down. How? I can't afford it. Are you going to pay for it? She retorted. Here. I took the laptop from her. Let's find a place to sit and I'll take a look. We found a clean table in the student union, and I started inspecting the laptop. No cracks in the case, the screen was intact. Nothing obvious. I removed and reinserted the battery. Still nothing. Hey, what are you doing? Troubleshooting. I'm an IT major, just give me a minute. I pulled out my multi-tool and began removing the case. Whoa, stop. Don't break it. I sighed. What's your name? Ellie. Ellie, got it. I'm Tim. This will go a lot faster if you don't shout at me. It's not the first laptop I've fixed. I handed her a $10 bill. How about grabbing us a couple of drinks? Mountain Dew for me? She hesitated, then took the money and headed off. Once she was gone, I got to work. I removed the case and quickly spotted the issue, a loose cable from the motherboard. I reconnected it, put the case back on, and powered it up. By the time she returned with the drinks, the lock screen was already up. Ta-da! I said, spinning the screen toward her with a little flourish. Oh my God, really? She was visibly relieved. It should be good now, just a loose cable. Finally, I took a proper look at her. She was pretty, stressed but pretty. We looked surprisingly similar, both fair-skinned with blonde hair. Her eyes were green, mine blue. We didn't look like siblings, but cousins. Definitely possible. Thank goodness, she exhaled. I'm sorry for yelling earlier. I've just been having a rough few months. I shook my head. No worries. I should have been more considerate. I was trying to think of a way to keep the conversation going. I didn't know much about her, other than that she was attractive. But it was college, and I was a guy. That was reason enough for me. Yeah, I probably should have been calmer too. She smiled and started to stand. Wait. Let me text you my number. You know, in case something goes wrong with the laptop again. Smooth, Tim. She raised an eyebrow but gave me her number anyway. I guess I wasn't too bad looking. It was college, and she was a girl. Good enough reasons for her, too. It wasn't exactly a legendary love story, but we started hanging out, became friends, then friends with benefits, and eventually lovers. A couple of years later, we got married. We made a funny pair, me, the happy goth guy, and her, the moody hippie girl. But the longer we were together, the less moody she became. I met her father a few months after we officially started dating, and he thanked me for being a steadying influence in her life. After dinner, Don pulled me aside and confided, "I haven't seen her this happy in a long time. She's finally starting to think about the future in a positive way again, and I can't thank you enough for that." Over time, I became close to him as well. By the time we got married, he was calling me son, which meant a lot to me. We shared similar views on emotions, and in some ways I felt more connected to him than to my own family. After we married, I started calling him Dad. Ellie was his only child, and he was overjoyed. I eventually began my corporate IT career as a network technician, starting at an entry-level position. The pay was decent, and since Ellie and I didn't have many expenses, she was able to keep working at her college job in a real, physical bookstore. She adored paper books, vinyl records, and all the media that was kept alive mainly by nostalgia and love. Her schedule was unpredictable, but we always made time for each other. Her feelings toward Derek changed over time. In the beginning, she barely mentioned him, and when she did, it was with disdain. That was fine by me. No guy likes hearing about his girlfriend's ex. But eventually, her attitude shifted. Derek started seeing some success, mostly in the indie small label scene, but eventually, he even got a bit of radio play. The music industry had circled back to the singer-songwriter with a guitar-based band trend. One day we were in the car listening to the radio, and one of his songs came on. I went to change the station, but she stopped me and held my hand, kissing it. "It's okay. Derek finally got his dream, and I got mine. I'm glad he's happy." Recently, we had been discussing starting a family. We'd been married for nearly 5 years. I had been promoted to a lead position, and it was probably time to hang up my work boots soon. We were financially stable and wanted to have children while we were still young enough to keep up with them. Ellie had stopped taking the pill. We weren't exactly trying for a baby, but we weren't avoiding it either, and it had been 4 months. During my recent physical, I mentioned it to the doctor, and he recommended I get some additional tests done. For now, just a blood test at one of those diagnostic labs that specialize in this sort of thing, not the more in-depth fertility tests. I had taken the morning off, so I went to the nearest lab a few miles away. It was almost lunchtime by the time they were done with the blood work, and there was a new cafe nearby that Ellie and I had been wanting to try. I figured I could check it out while I was there. As I was about to walk into the restaurant, I saw Ellie and Derek, and they were kissing. I felt as if I were having an out-of-body experience. This couldn't be real. Someone had to be pulling a prank, some kind of stupid YouTube stunt. My wife couldn't... Oh, God. It hit me like a punch to the gut. I shook my head, trying to clear it. With just enough awareness, I took out my phone and snapped a few pictures, then walked away, numb and in shock. I managed to make it about half a block, turned the corner, and collapsed onto a bus stop bench. I couldn't think. My mouth was dry, and I felt like I was about to be sick. An elderly woman noticed my distress, and I think asked if I was okay, but I couldn't respond. She might as well have been speaking Swahili for all the sense I could make of it. I texted my boss that I felt sick because I ate something. Somehow I managed to get back to my car, but I couldn't drive yet. I knew I was going to have an accident. And then, out of the blue, I felt the full force of my emotions. I started screaming in rage, banging on the steering wheel, shouting something about this cheater and her boyfriend. I swore I wouldn't just let it go. I screamed until my voice was hoarse, and then tears welled up in my eyes. How could she do that? Why would she do that? I was with her when he left. Why? I dropped my head on the steering wheel and cried until I ran out of tears. Exhausted, I finally started the car and drove back to our apartment. I packed my bag. Not his own, but hers. My name was on the lease. I paid for everything. We didn't have any children, and there's no way I'm going to touch her again. It was all over. I thought about having a beer, but she made me stop drinking. I remembered her feigned concern this morning. "Oh, darling, I want us to live together for many more years." Yes, that's right. So she can keep milking me while she's dating her former loser. Or not anymore, I guess. Damn it. Damn it all. I had no idea when she would be back. I just said she would be delayed. I couldn't stay there any longer. At school, I loved running, playing sports and martial arts, which is quite unusual for a goth kid. I hadn't done this for a long time, but now I needed something physical to take my mind off all the emotions. I found my old sneakers in the closet, pulled on shorts and a t-shirt, and just ran. I was out of shape, but I was probably also dissociating, in that mental state where you can push your body beyond its usual limits because you're disconnected from yourself. I had no clear sense of how long or how far I had been running. My body knew how to keep going at a pace that would allow me to last as long as possible, but my mind wasn't aware of where I was heading or why. When my body finally made my brain realize I was nearing collapse, my lungs on fire, muscles aching with lactic acid and no strength left, I slumped against a building in an unfamiliar part of town and just stopped. Stopped running, stopped thinking, stopped being in any meaningful way. Some undetermined amount of time later, my mind started functioning again. It was getting dark. I had no clue where I was. None of the buildings looked familiar, and I had stopped far enough away from any street sign to make them unreadable in the dim light before the street lamps came on. People say you can't run away from your problems, but they just haven't tried hard enough. The tech-savvy guy finally remembered that he lived in the 21st century. I pulled out my phone and checked the map app. Wow, I had covered nearly 7 miles before collapsing. It's amazing what pure existential dread can push you to do. And then, oh damn, yep, those were definitely my legs. I groaned as I forced myself to stand, feeling the exhaustion, soreness, and blisters. Uber. Yeah, I'd just call an Uber. My driver, Amir, and I stopped by a deli on the way back to my apartment, and I bought dinner for both of us. Just a sandwich and chips, but still. I mean, being a gig worker is tough, and since I wasn't planning on having kids anytime soon, why not buy the guy a sandwich? I had the cash. I also grabbed a six-pack for myself. Amir noticed I was in pretty rough shape, and as it turned out, he sold pot on the side, so yeah, lucky me. Hustle culture at its finest. I scrolled through my text messages on the way. Oh, great. Ellie let me know she was going to be late. I wonder what she was up to. Probably swamped at work. Or getting busy at work. Or on a desk. On that douche Ag's couch. Or worse, our bed. Damn it. When I got back to my apartment complex, I dragged my battered body up the stairs as carefully as I could, taking each step gingerly while my body screamed from the punishment I'd put it through. It was slow going, but I was making progress. Turned out that in the race that mattered, the tortoise lost. Aesop would be disappointed. Screw it, I muttered as I collapsed onto the couch. I had a beer with dinner for the first time in almost 5 years, and it was absolutely glorious. It tasted like garbage, but it was still the best thing I'd had in ages. It tasted like meaningless rebellion, drinking poison just to spite my wife, and I loved it. I lit up a joint from my new dealer and puffed my way into a temporary state of bliss. About 2 hours later, Ellie came in, sniffing the air. "Is that wee D? Tim, what the hell are you doing? What happened to you?" I still hadn't changed out of my sweaty clothes. I was exhausted, beat up, smelling awful, and just a little buzzed. Actually, more than a little. I was pretty damn high. Amir had some strong stuff. Me? Oh, nothing much. You know, the usual. How was your day? She was really killing my vibe. Tim, you're freaking me out. What's going on? Ding, ding, ding. The bell rang. Time to start the confrontation. You tell me, Ellie, how long have you been seeing Derek? She turned pale and stuttered. I think your engine's stalled, Elle. Want to take a moment to figure out how you're going to lie to me and try again? Man, I should get riled up more often. She was deep in thought, her mouth moving but no words coming out. I pulled out my phone, opened the photo app, and tossed it at her feet. Let's skip the lying, Ellie. I went to the cafe to check if it would be a good spot for our date. I scoffed in disbelief. Looks like I was wrong. I glanced at the floor. So how long has it been? Tim, it's not... I was up on my feet in an instant, adrenaline and rage drowning out the alarm bells ringing in my head. I was right in her face, furious. How long, Ellie? She recoiled and began to cry. 2 months. I shook my head in disbelief. 2 months. That's just... Her voice was barely above a whisper. This time. 2 syllables, 8 letters, and that was all it took to shatter my world. Everything suddenly clicked in my mind. Derek was a touring musician, and Ellie had been unusually affectionate for the past 2 months. She would go through these phases 2 or 3 times a year, lasting a month or two, followed by a week or so of being down. This pattern had been occurring for what felt like ages. Oh no. Oh no. It went back to before we even got married. I don't know if it was the fatigue, the weed, the beer, or just the shocking collapse of my reality, but I could barely stay upright. Jesus, Ellie, Jesus, I pushed past her and made my way to the bedroom, desperate to reach it before my legs gave out. I just managed to fall onto the edge of the bed, cradling my head in my hands. 6 years? You've been cheating on me for 6 years? Why did... We got married, Elle. You said yes to me. Tears streamed down my face, stronger than before. It was one thing to think that my wife had fallen out of love with me, but to realize she never loved me at all was crushing. She followed me into the room and knelt in front of me, trying to meet my gaze. Because I love you, Tim. I still love you. You're the best man in the world. I started laughing uncontrollably, tears mixing with my laughter. I couldn't even respond. Her voice grew more urgent. Please, Tim, please, I mean it. You're the best man I've ever met. You make me feel safe and loved. Please, I need you to... That's when I lost it. I need you to get the hell out of my life, you worthless, cheating liar. Stop standing here with your lies, grab your bag and leave. She gasped and reached for me. What, Tim? No. No, I'm not leaving you like this. I don't want you to hurt yourself. I pushed her hand away, and losing her balance, she fell to the floor. I've never laid a hand on her before. In fact, I have never raised my hand against any woman. To be honest, I haven't beaten anyone since I was in the 4th grade, except for martial arts classes in high school. Damn it, Al, I'm sorry. I paused. To hell with it all. I shouldn't have touched you, but you shouldn't have tried to touch me either. Did you really think you could talk yourself out of it? That I'll still want to be with you after you cheated on me? How much of a girl of easy virtue are you, Ellie? I'm not a girl of easy virtue. Anger flashed in her eyes. She pulled away. I was too shocked to react. It was Ellie. We're talking about the same person who couldn't hurt even insects, always insisting on using a piece of paper to take them outside. Her hand slapped me hard on the cheek. The gloves were off. I had never touched her before tonight, but I think today was the right time to do it. My adrenaline spiked again, even though the warning signs in my mind stopped flashing red and went out completely. I grabbed her hand. Ellie screamed in pain as I yanked her to her feet. She stumbled, but I just dragged her along, picking up her suitcase as we left our bedroom. Our bedroom. What a joke. Tim, please. Stop it. She resisted but couldn't fight back. When we got to the front door, she started begging. No, Tim, no, please forgive me. I love you, please. We need to talk, baby, me. Don't you dare call me baby, you lying cheater, I roared, and she recoiled like a prey before a predator. I was Tim, her baby, her love, her comfort. She no longer recognized the man in front of her. Good. She was beginning to understand how I felt. I threw open the apartment door and tossed her suitcase through it. Our neighbors had started peeking out. I pushed her through next, and she stumbled, falling to her knees. Standing over her in the doorway, I glared down at her. You can grab the rest of your stuff later. Have your dad call me and I'll arrange it with him. I never want to see you or hear from you again. Tim, wait! My purse. It was near the door. I grabbed it, opened it up, pulled out her keys, and threw it at her. Not to her. At her. But my keys, I paid for this place. It's under my name. It's not yours anymore. But how am I supposed to get to my dad's? The nerve of her. Call your dad, call your boyfriend, get an Uber. Hell, go work a corner for bus fare, I don't care. I slammed the door shut. I locked it as she banged on the other side, begging to come back in so we could talk, pleading for her keys, begging for someone she clearly never appreciated. I slid down the door, feeling the weight of grief rise up in me. Shame for how I had let my emotions spiral out of control. The anger that almost led to something worse. God. I almost hit her. After she slapped me, there was a moment where I almost struck her. That's not who I wanted to be. The grief started anew, not just for the loss of love, but for the loss of who I thought I was. Every warning signal in my mind went dark. The indicators shot up to their limits, then switched off. I couldn't keep myself upright, even while sitting. My body slumped to the side, and I drifted off to sleep to the sound of the most important person in my life pounding on the door, crying. Where? Oh, damn. Why did everything hurt so much? Oh, God. Ellie. Oh, no. Slowly, I forced myself into a sitting position. My neck and back felt like I'd been in a car accident, and my legs were completely shot. My hands, though, still worked. I fumbled for my phone, pulled it out of my pocket, and silenced the alarm. Unsurprisingly, there were texts from both Ellie and Don. Don's messages were full of concern for me, which was really touching. Some dads would be angry at how I'd hurt their daughter, but Don just wanted to make sure I was okay. I guess he understood what I was going through. Ellie's messages were mostly desperate pleas, a bit of anger for being kicked out, but mainly begging, please talk to me. Please don't do anything drastic. Please don't hurt yourself. Please don't throw us away. Too late for that, Elle. I knew I was going to be late for work. At this point, it was inevitable. I hobbled to the bathroom and stripped off my clothes, which smelled strongly of stale sweat and wee-dee. For that matter, so did I. I relieved myself in the shower and gave myself a quick wash, then brushed my teeth. My jaw throbbed where Ellie had punched me. The reflection in the mirror reminded me of Ed Norton in Fight Club, right before his fight with the boss. Hopefully that wasn't on today's agenda, but it had been a week full of surprises. I arrived at work almost 30 minutes late, barely able to walk. I looked like I'd been assaulted, and frankly, I wished that was the worst of it. My manager, Al, came over to my desk to ask why I was late, but froze when he saw me. Jesus, Tim, what happened? Few things are more humiliating than breaking down at your desk at work, but most of those had already happened to me in the last 24 hours anyway. Al gave me the rest of the week off. He was a decent guy and had been through a divorce himself. In his office, he sympathized with me, sharing that he had caught his ex with a guy 10 years younger and 50 pounds lighter than him. At least you don't have kids, Tim. I know that doesn't help much right now, but you can just get her out of your life. With a firm pat on the back, he sent me off into the world to do nothing. It was midweek and midday, All my friends were working. My body was wrecked from my run and the emotional toll of everything. I tried to think of somewhere to go, but I had no appetite, couldn't focus enough to enjoy a movie, and wasn't ready to start day drinking. There was no chance I could attempt another run like the one I did yesterday. Probably not for a week, considering how I felt. So I sat in my car, putting off the inevitable, until I finally accepted that the only place to go was home. I started researching divorce laws in our state. We didn't have kids, much stuff, or any real property. Since it was a community property state, she'd likely get one of the cars, all her books and records, her clothes, and half the cash in our account. Maybe even alimony, whatever. It seemed like a small price to pay to get her out of my life. I could even start the paperwork myself. I collapsed onto the couch and mindlessly scrolled through Netflix, searching for something engaging enough to distract me, but not so good that it would be ruined by me watching it in my current state of mind. I hadn't settled on anything when I heard a knock at the door. I figured it was Ellie, or maybe Dawn. I opened the door, and there stood Derek. "Dude, I'm sorry, this isn't how I wanted to meet you." My fist clenched, and I felt a surge of anger, but then I just couldn't. I was too drained, too tired. This was just another insult stacked on top of all the others, and I was crushed under their weight. This guy, with his neck tattoo and messy black hair, styled in a way that must have taken at least 30 minutes, was the final absurdity in the mess of my life. I could only laugh. "Can I come in? We need to talk." I was still laughing, and this made me double over. This was what my life had become. We were on the 3rd floor. The stairwell was open, only about 20 feet away. A part of me thought, why not just toss him over? You've got 6 inches in height and 30 pounds on him. Another part whispered, you could just throw yourself over instead. And then there was the craziest voice that said, you've come this far, why not see how this plays out? Let him in. You can always kill him later. I turned my back on him, still laughing, and motioned for him to come in. He hesitated, but eventually walked in and sat on a chair while I collapsed onto the couch. Okay, jerk. You think we need to talk. I think you just walked into the apartment of the guy whose wife you've been sleeping with, and now I'm standing between you and the exit. So unless you have something absolutely incredible to say, you're going out that window. Derek didn't seem like the brightest guy. He struck me as someone who really felt things. The kind of guy who thinks he's in tune with your pain, man. He probably thought his cheap imitation of sensitivity would help him here, just like it probably helped him get into girls' pants. My girls' pants. He sighed. You're angry. I get that. I chuckled. Really? Do you think you understand how angry I am that my wife cheated on me with you even before we got married? That I only found out about it because I saw her kissing you in public? That I've spent almost my entire adult life on some girl of easy virtue who has fun with Jack White as soon as I turn my back on him? But I think only when you come back from the tour. So she's with me the rest of the time. I'm lucky. He looked at me with pain in his eyes. Yeah, dude. Yes, you're lucky. She will be constantly present in your life. I'll never have that. I scoffed. Well, Derek, you can start now. She's out of my life, so feel free to take her off my hands. Oh, wait, you already did. He lowered his head. No, I didn't. I couldn't take her from you, even if you're done with her, and I don't think you are. I don't give a damn what you think, jerk. Even if you're finished with her, I couldn't take her from you. She'd never leave you. You're the one she needs. I think that even if you don't want her back, she won't be with anyone else. Good. Screw her. He looked at me. I know you're hurt. I know we hurt you, man. I'm sorry. I really wish we hadn't. But don't take your anger at my weakness out on her. Your weakness? What the hell does that even mean? He glanced out the window, the one I had threatened to throw him through. Leaving Ellie was the hardest thing I ever did, man. I loved her. I don't think I'll ever love anyone like I loved her. But I loved my dream more. I always wanted to be on stage, playing guitar and singing. At first, it was everything I had hoped for. Great. Now get to the part where you wrecked my life. He nodded. Ellie was my muse, man. I knew that. But I thought maybe the memory of her, the pain of leaving her, would be enough to inspire me. It worked for a while, but then it didn't. After our second tour, I tried writing new songs, but nothing came. I just couldn't. Ellie wasn't there. He lowered his head. I never meant to. I knew I couldn't be what Ellie needed, but I hoped I could at least be her friend. So I went to see her at the bookstore. She was furious with me, and I deserved it. I apologized, not for leaving, because we both knew that wasn't true, but for how I left her so suddenly. And well, you know Ellie. I scoffed, but he kept going. She's so kind, so forgiving. We went for coffee to talk. Talk, right? I rolled my eyes. It really was just talk, man, I swear. She told me about you, how happy you made her. She was sure you were the one. I shook my head. No, man, I'm not lying. I saw it in her eyes. It was love. She had felt it for me once, but I could tell what she had with you was stronger. You were her everything. I noticed a tear in his eye. You were about to give her everything I couldn't. I was genuinely happy for her, man. His voice wavered. But I was so jealous of you. You got to be her fairy tale while I was just the guy who couldn't hold on to her. My tone was laced with contempt. Spare me your pity party and get to the point. He nodded. Afterwards, I got home and started writing again. Really writing. The songs were good, man, better than the stuff I wrote when Elle and I were together. But soon I hit a wall, so I called her and asked if we could hang out more. She hesitated at first. Didn't want you worrying about her. Dude, I really upset her when I left the first time. I know it. I know it was you who helped her collect her thoughts. She didn't want you to go through this again if I left her as a friend, too. That's why she didn't tell you about us hanging out together at first. We started by meeting for coffee. Then she came to me to listen to new music. Then we had a few drinks. Yes, I understand. Then you slept with my girlfriend. Or was she already my fiancée by then? He looked away. Not yet. She felt so guilty after that. She wanted to confess and tell you everything at once, but I did. I convinced her not to do it. I told her it would destroy you. It's my fault. In all of this. Especially what happened next. There was pain written all over his face. Genuine pain. To be honest, the guy didn't seem smart enough to be a good actor. I knew I needed her. Of course, I needed my muse, but I needed her in my life. I didn't realize this before. I convinced myself that I could survive without her light as long as I had my music. But I was wrong. I was greedy. I wanted all of this. I returned to her bookstore a week later. I played her the songs I wrote after we left. He couldn't meet my eyes. God help me, I deceived her. I made her believe that as long as she's doing well with you, she can still be my muse, that we can still be together sometimes, that she inspires me to be creative. Dude, we gave so much to each other when we were younger, it seemed like it natural. For her. For both of us. She felt guilty at first, but eventually, it's become normal, you know? It wasn't about, if you finish this sentence, I can't vouch for myself. It was said coldly, without any feeling, and it was absolutely true. He stopped and nodded. Yeah, I guess you're right. It sounds like a load of crap to me too, but we convinced ourselves it was real. I convinced her of that. It felt that way because nothing happened. You didn't find out. The world didn't blow up. It was just our lives, and you were both happy. I was happy too. But it was a crappy thing to do to you. A crappy thing I made her do to you, man. But please don't hold it against Elle for that." I just laughed again. Hold it against her, like I'm grounding her for breaking curfew. She cheated on me, man. Suddenly, a horrifying thought surfaced in my mind. Were you even using protection? I hadn't thought about that until now. Too focused on the pain to think straight. Damn, I needed to get tested. He hesitated. At first. Then I missed feeling her. I told her I'd stay celibate for the last month on the road. Get tested when I got back. Make sure you were safe. She insisted on that. But that was years ago. We were so deep into it by then, it felt normal. He spread his hands, as if somehow I'd find answers in his empty, outstretched palms. Why my wife let a musician go unprotected with her. Oh my God. I would have thrown up if there was anything in my stomach. Get out. Just get the hell out of my house. I stood up, having rested just enough to let my anger recharge. Wait, man, please, I'm begging you. Don't punish Ellie because of me. I've known her since we were kids. I knew what buttons to push, how to pull at her heartstrings. I'm the bad guy here, I know that. But please, please, I'm begging you, man. You're her dream. You're the good guy, her good guy. She's always said that. The best man I've ever met. Please don't take that away. Please don't take your love from her. It'll destroy her. He half stood, but I was already grabbing him by the collar. I dragged him to the door and threw him out. I was getting good at it. Tell the A girl of easy virtue I'll have some papers for her to sign soon. I slammed the door in his face. Once I sat back down on the couch, I just stared at the ceiling. The truth was, I still loved her. That was the cruelest part. Now, I also hated her. I never thought I could hate her, but I did. And yet, I loved her. If she had just told me about it, if she had come to me before I found out, if she'd confessed, cried, apologized, and begged for forgiveness, maybe, just maybe, I could have gotten past it. But this, finding out like this, God. I needed someone to talk to. Not her, and definitely not that jerk. Not my loud, overwhelming family either. I needed someone who had been through something like this. Someone who knew everyone involved. Someone I could trust to be fair, if not entirely unbiased. I grabbed my keys, got in the car, and drove. Hey, son. Don pulled me into a big, comforting hug. Tears started to well up in my eyes, and he held me at arm's length. Hey now, it's going to be okay. We'll figure this out. He led me inside his house. He already had coffee brewed and poured me a cup, cream, no sugar, just the way I liked it. Back in my goth days, I used to joke, pale and bitter, like my women. That changed when Elle came along. I used to appreciate her sweetness once she got past her brooding phase, but I guess she'd been getting her sweetness from somewhere else for a while now. We sat at his kitchen table, the same one where I had sat with him when Ellie first introduced us, the same table where I had asked for her hand. It might have been old-fashioned, but he had genuinely appreciated the gesture. I sat there for a while, gathering my thoughts. He gave me the space I needed, though his presence remained comforting. Finally, I was ready to speak. He had already spoken to Ellie and knew I had kicked her out. He understood the general reason, knew what she had done, but didn't have many details. I told him everything I'd learned from the guy. He just shook his head, looking sad. I thought I raised her better than that. I'm sorry, Tim. You deserved better. He took a deep breath. Have you figured out what you're going to do? I took a drink and thought hard. I don't know. I'm so angry. I hate her, but I still love her. But I don't think that's enough. I can't trust her anymore. He paused thoughtfully. I'm not so sure about that. No, I get why you're looking at me like that. But, he gazed up at the ceiling. Ellie isn't Gloria. I know you came to me for advice, so let's start there. Gloria was always deceitful. I hate speaking ill of the dead, but it's the truth. He looked at me earnestly. Gloria was an addict. She cheated on me, stole from me, and trapped me in a marriage because she needed someone to manipulate and mistreat. She never loved me. Ellie isn't like that. I know it's hard for you to see right now, but she's different. He paused, debating whether to continue. Then, with a determined nod, he went on. Son, I love you. I'm going to share something very few people know. Ellie isn't biologically my daughter. She's got the same sandy blonde hair as me, and apart from that, she looks just like her mom. So I always assumed, even after I knew Gloria had cheated. I didn't find out the truth until Ellie was 8. She got injured in an accident, and when they were checking blood types, it became clear she couldn't be mine. It was genetically impossible. Oh my God, Don, I'm so sorry. He smiled gently. Thank you. It hurt back then, but I realized it didn't matter. She's my child, and I'll always love her. DNA is just DNA. It doesn't define us, not entirely. It's how we're raised that truly shapes who we are. That's what I've always believed. Don's voice cracked. And I'm sorry, son. I raised her wrong. I know she's a good girl. Kind, smart, wouldn't harm a soul. Deep down, she knows right from wrong. But she's always been, well, a bit naive. Too trusting. And Derek, ... The pain was clear on his face. I never had anything against the boy. He was a good friend to her, and they supported each other when I couldn't be the parent I needed to be. That made her depend on him. And when they started dating, I knew he'd end up breaking her heart. Secretly, I was relieved when he did. I thought it would free her from him. I could see his type. He's not really a bad guy. I snorted. I'd love to see who you think is bad if he's not. Don frowned, but not at me. More at himself for not keeping Derek away from his daughter. He's weak. Just a weak boy who thinks he's a man. He's needy, artistic. Not that there's anything wrong with being artistic, mind you. I teach English. I know art is one of humanity's highest pursuits. But he got it in his head that he needed the praise that comes with being an artist, rather than the fulfillment from the art itself. I understand that. Nobody wants to feel like they're shouting into a void. But it made him egotistical. Made him feel like the world owes him. His brows knitted together. I want you to think about your conversation with him. How much of it was really about Ellie, and how much of it was about him? I replayed the conversation in my mind as best as I could. It was mostly about him, about how it was all his fault, how he couldn't have her, and how he manipulated her. He was apologizing and asking me to take her back, but everything was centered on him and what he'd done. I figured it was his way of making sure I didn't blame her and put the blame on him instead. Don frowned. That adds up. The kid has a bit of a martyr complex. It goes hand in hand with the ego. Anything good that happens is because of him, and anything bad is his fault too. Like I said, he's a boy, not a man. He took a deep breath before continuing. I'm not going to tell you what to do. That's your decision. But I will say that I think you can probably trust Ellie. Derek is a manipulator. I believe she already knows how badly she's messed up. She loves you. What she's done is terrible, but I know she loves you deeply. Anyone who sees you two together can tell. I wouldn't call you son if you were just her husband. You've earned that title by being the best man you can be for her. And I want you to know that even if things don't work out, that's how I'll always see you. I began to tear up. Thank you, Dad. The emotion choked my words. He patted my shoulder. If Ellie breaks away from him, I don't think she'll ever fall for him again. No one else has ever had that kind of hold on her like he did, except for you. He paused, looking away, and added quietly with a touch of sadness, including me, I guess. Then, after a deep breath, he continued, I can't deceive you. If it were up to me, I'd suggest you head over to Derek's place, take her hand, and tell her never to see him again, then carry on with your lives. Get some therapy, find a path forward. You've been great for her, and I believe she's been good for you too. But I can't say that's the right choice for you. She's not Gloria, and you're not me. I will say one thing, though. People often say you need to forgive to move on, but that's not quite accurate. I forgave Gloria so I could stop hating her, so I could try to be a good father to Ellie. But I went about it the wrong way. He sipped his coffee. I've always been fascinated by linguistics. The way words come together, how languages evolve, taking parts from other languages or smoothing out what's unnecessary. Sometimes that's beneficial. In English, we don't deal with gendered nouns like LA or L, but we also lack a second-person plural. You has to cover both singular and plural, which is why terms like y'all, yous, and youans pop up to fill the gap. Language is inherently imprecise. It's a way to convey ideas concisely, but that also means English lacks words for everything we need to express. That's why we borrow words like schadenfreude. But as far as I know, we don't have a word from another language that replaces forgive when it comes to recovering from the harm others inflict. Some use accept, but that has its own implications. Neither feels quite right. When I was younger, I didn't understand that. I forgave Gloria in the Christian sense, the forgive and forget mindset. I let her back into my life without any conditions. I tried to trust her again. But when she failed me once more, she threw my forgiveness back in my face, using it as an excuse to continue her bad behavior. In the end, my well-meaning forgiveness led her to die alone in a flophouse, with a needle in her arm. He looked me directly in the eyes. I don't know the right word for what you need to do. Forgive is too vague for it. You need to find a way to release your anger. I heard that you got physical with her. I started to speak, but he cut me off. Don't. You know you shouldn't have done it, and you know it was wrong. I know you'll apologize. I also know because I did the same with Gloria. It was wrong then too. Our anger doesn't make it right. And if you hold on to it, it'll destroy you. You might even end up hurting the ones. He hesitated, pained by the next words. If things don't work out with Ellie, it could end up hurting the woman you love next. Yes, you have to learn how to let go of the anger. Forgive her if that helps you move on. But don't forget what she's done, and don't excuse her behavior. It pains me to say it, she's my daughter. But she needs to understand from you what she didn't learn from me. That her actions have consequences, even if she was manipulated into them. That doesn't mean you have to destroy everything, but you also shouldn't just take her back without safeguarding yourself. Don't make the same mistake I did, son. I nodded. So, what do you think my next step should be? Don smiled. I think you already know. There's only one person involved in all of this that you haven't talked to yet. Damn. I was hoping you had a different suggestion. He stood up and I followed. He hugged me. It was always going to come down to you and her, son. There's no avoiding that. I left and messaged Ellie. She replied almost instantly, agreeing to meet. But she insisted we meet at Derek's place, with him present. He was worried I might hurt her. As much as I hated to admit it, he had a point. I didn't like what that said about me, but I couldn't deny the truth. If things went south, if tempers flared, I was so filled with anger that I might actually do something I'd regret. The following morning, I located his building. It wasn't as run down as I had anticipated. I understand that musicians don't earn a lot. It wasn't a dilapidated tenement either. Instead, it was an old warehouse that had been converted into apartments. I knocked on Derek's door and Ellie answered. She looked stunning, as she always had. My heart ached when I noticed her puffy, red-rimmed eyes. It seemed she wanted to embrace me. Just 3 days earlier, I would have swept her into my arms, vowing to do anything to alleviate her suffering. But now, I was the one causing her pain, just as she was for me. I wasn't the root of it. That was all on her. The source of our suffering was lurking just beyond the door. "Hi, please come in," she said timidly, stepping aside without touching me. The apartment matched the stereotype of a touring musician's dwelling. Cinder block shelves, a coffee table made from a cable spool, and milk crates serving as both storage and extra seating. The chairs and couch were worn, likely salvaged from thrift stores or dumpsters. Brick walls and bare floors completed the ambiance, and I wondered if I might catch something just from standing in the room. However, the wall displayed an impressive collection of guitars, maybe a dozen, with a few more stands scattered about. I knew little about guitars and even less about music. I couldn't carry a tune to save my life. Yet I still realized I was staring at thousands, perhaps tens of thousands, of dollars worth of musical gear. Derek settled on one end of the couch while my wife occupied the other. I couldn't help but wonder how often they had been intimate there. As Derek sat down, he motioned toward a chair. I briefly thought about stubbornly remaining standing, but my legs were still aching. I took a seat in the uncomfortable, tattered chair and regretted not staying on my feet. We all exchanged glances. Since it was my meeting, I thought I should kick things off. I heard Derek's side of things, and I know how I feel right now. But Elle, I think it's fair to let you have your say. She let out a sigh. I tried to do that when you told me, "No, hold on, just stop. You can't play the victim here. Not in relation to anything I've done. If you go down that path, I'm walking out and calling a lawyer. Do you understand me?" This was not starting well. I was already frustrated, and she seemed oblivious to how serious the situation was. Reluctantly, she nodded. "I'm sorry. I know I hurt you, I did. But it's been tough for me to admit who I am, what I've done, how deeply—" She began to tear up. "How much I've hurt the best man I've ever known. My husband, She sobbed. I felt a twinge of sympathy for her, but she had opened this conversation the wrong way. I gave her a moment to regain her composure and then said, "Just say what you need to say, Ellie." Taking a deep breath, she replied, "There's no justification for my actions. It's true that Derek manipulated me." He looked uneasy, but not nearly as much as I wished he would. "But I allowed it to happen. I should have informed you about meeting him from the start. I should have told you when I cheated, giving you the chance to walk away if you couldn't allow me to try to make things right." She looked down. "But I can't apologize for marrying you. For cheating on you, yes. That was wrong. And I should have told you I cheated before we got married, like I said. I should have stopped right away, but God, I love you so much. You're everything to me." "Clearly not." She reacted as if I had slapped her. I wondered if that would have been kinder. "You are." "Yes, I slept with Derek. And I'm not going to lie, I enjoyed it. I felt special, being his muse. He looked at me in a way you didn't. I knew he adored me, but he also knew he'd never fully have me, not the way you do. I was his unattainable girl, the one he— Cut the crap, Elle. You were obviously very attainable. I don't want to hear about how sorry you are because the only thing you're really sorry about is getting caught. I looked down. If I hadn't caught you, how long would this have gone on? The rest of our marriage? Derek chimed in. No, man. Ellie wanted to come clean with you. That's what we were talking about at lunch that day. I rolled my eyes, and Ellie added, Yes. I know you have no reason to believe me, but it's true. I was going to tell you that night when I got home. Sure. That's why his tongue was down your throat in the middle of a cafe in broad daylight. Clearly, the guilt was overwhelming. Why on earth should I believe anything either of you say? Derek gave Ellie an encouraging look, and she turned to face me. We were ending things. That was supposed to be our last time together. I'm pregnant, Tim. What? What? My head spun. This had just gone from a nightmare to something much worse. She nodded. About a month and a half now. She saw me doing the math and quietly added, Yes. It could be Derek's, but we both hope it's yours. I buried my head in my hands, trying to steady myself as the room spun. I took deep breaths, focusing on the floor as I struggled to regain my balance. Derek tried to speak. Hey, man! Shut up. I struggled to stand and started pacing, trying to let the ache in my legs help me focus through the pain in my chest. So what? Were you planning to come home and say, Hey, babe, just so you know, I'm pregnant, and it might be from the guy I've been seeing behind your back for the past 6 years? Did you really think that was going to go any better than this? She wouldn't meet my eyes. I was going to confess and apologize. I know you're a forgiving person, Tim. I'd do anything to make it right, and I know you wouldn't want to hurt me, even though I've hurt you so deeply. You're such a good... Stop telling me how damn good I am, I yelled, and both of them shrank back. I'm so sick of people saying that, like it somehow gives them permission to treat me like crap and expect me to just take it. God, you selfish bitch, and you arrogant jerk. Damn it, I wish I'd never met you, Elle. I moved toward the wall with the guitars, just looking for somewhere to lean, to gather my thoughts, to recover. I saw Derek tense up. I don't know guitars, but I can tell when something is a prized possession. In the center of the wall was a guitar, signed by a dozen names I didn't recognize, beside a card labeled 37/100. It looked expensive, precious, irreplaceable. I grabbed him off the wall when Derek started to climb. He shouted, Hey, wait! But I had already lifted him over my head with both hands and lowered him like an axe, intending to punch a hole in the floor. Did it make me feel better? Quite a bit. But there was still a whole wall of those damn things waiting for me. I expected him to start yelling, screaming, throwing a tantrum. But instead, he surprised me. He picked up an old, battered guitar from a stand near the sofa and came up to me, holding it out like an offering. Here, break this one next time. This is the first guitar that I bought with my own money earned from a part-time job after school. I played it until I could afford something better. The one you broke was the rarest, but this one is the most precious to me. He lowered his head. Destroy everything if necessary. But please, please, don't hurt Ellie. Take her back. Let her relive her fairy tale. He thought I'd feel guilty, that I'd take it as some kind of great romantic sacrifice for her. But instead I felt nothing but disgust. You're such a jerk. He lifted his head slightly. What? Guys like you think that love is such grandiose, dramatic gestures. Writing songs for her, ostentatious displays of love, solemn dates. Of course, all this matters. But the little things, they mean more. I pressed the broken neck of the guitar against his throat, forcing him to look into my eyes. Ellie froze on the couch. When was the last time you took care of a girl, bringing her chicken soup when she was sick? Or did you take care to pay the bill that she had forgotten about without making her feel bad? How about she always has a roof over her head and food on the table? Massaging her legs after a long day at work, not because he wanted something in return, but simply because she needed it. Yeah, asshole. He didn't say anything. That's what love is. This is what love looks like in marriage. Reliability, trust, respect. Of course, sometimes passion wakes up in you and you try to keep it. I thought we had it. I think not. I turned to Ellie. But I guess we didn't have any of that, did we? Maybe this jerk has the right idea. Maybe it's all about how many girls you can impress by showing off. Because from the very beginning, we didn't have anything that was the main thing in our marriage. Ellie spoke up. It's not respect, Ellie. Can you really say that you respected me? Sneaking out with your ex behind my back? Reliability? Of course you could rely on me, but I couldn't rely on you. And trust? I shook my head. We both see what this has led to. I eased the tension in my neck and got ready to leave. She exclaimed, "But what about the baby?" I turned and looked at them both. When I saw them together, him standing, her sitting, I finally understood. I understood. They were honest. She was going to confess, because she had no other choice. Ellie and I were like distorted reflections of each other, me tall and broad-shouldered, her short and petite. Both are pale with blonde hair. The eyes are of different colors, but they look similar enough to be related. Derek, on the other hand, had olive skin, jet-black curly hair, and slightly lighter eyes. My voice was boiling with cold rage. You would never have told me if you hadn't gotten pregnant. She shifted uneasily. You would never have told me if Derek was like us, if you could hide what you did. You would have done exactly what Gloria did to Don. You would have forced me to raise another man's child by cuckolding me for real. I looked at Derek. Which one of you decided that you should tell me? He looked down, then looked at Ellie. I nodded. Well, as they say, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. She looked at me with fury. What the hell did you just say? You cheated on me. You were going to force me to raise someone else's child. I pulled my wallet out of my pocket, took out 2 20s, crossed the room and put them on the table in front of her. Here, find a dealer. Then you can become like Gloria. I couldn't have hurt her more. She opened her mouth to scream, but no sound came out. She knew. She knew I was right. She became the monster she was as a child. She would never have become the way her father raised her, because there is too much of her mother in her. Don allowed Gloria to be cruel, calling it being a good husband. But I wasn't her father. And I wasn't going to save her. Her fairy tale was over, and it was her own fault. I turned to leave when I felt Derek's hand on my shoulder. Her dark night appeared where her white night had failed. Dude, you can't talk to... I turned around and hit him. I hadn't practiced martial arts for many years, but I still knew how to strike. He fell backwards. He tried to raise himself on one arm, and I saw that he was blushing. He stole my dream. Now I'm going to take his dream away. I lifted my foot and threw another punch. I spat on him. We weren't even, but it was the closest we could get. Ellie rushed to him before I could reach the door. Sure. Of course, she took his side again. I was just her husband. She exclaimed, "Why, Tim? How can you be so cruel?" I just shook my head as I opened the door. You inspired me, Ellie. I think you're my muse too.